The Public Service Commission says it's received thousands of complaints over alleged corruption in government departments. Provinces that recorded a high number of complaints include Gauteng, the Western Cape, the Northern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal. Let's unpack some of these numbers. Joining us this afternoon is Anele Gxoyiya, who is the Public Service Commissioner. Commissioner, it's great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed for coming on. So you've received over 8,000 complaints of alleged corruption at government departments. Do you see this, Commissioner, the fact that people are coming forward with such complaints, as a positive thing?
Look, let me first explain that we are handling the National Anti-Corruption Hotline as per the Presidential Directive. And the National Anti-Corruption Hotline, we receive through it a variety of complaints. Some are corruption related, some are related to human resource issues, some are related to service delivery, and as well as the complaints of the non-payment. So they vary in terms of those complaints. But then we collect everything. We say, this is the number of complaints that we received from that province. This is the number of complaints that we received from that province. But we must indicate that we are happy to realize that people are gradually getting to realize that it is important to report all the cases of maladministration, corruption and mismanagement of funds, as well as other labor relations irregularities through the National Anti-Corruption Hotline.
I imagine, Commissioner, that it's quite a job to sift through the number of calls that come through on the hotline?
It is, but the kind of technology that we have is able to record every call that comes in. It counts, and it also locates the calls. And then when the calls are referred to the relevant units, then each unit records its own number of calls. So it's quite it's a cumbersome exercise, but it is quite manageable. So we are managing to do it.
Right. And in terms of, you say that 900 of these complaints of alleged corruption were at public entities. Do you follow the process through to see how many of them are legitimate complaints and how eventually those complaints end up, whether anyone is held responsible and so on?
What we normally do, we receive the complaints, we weigh them, of course, and we then refer them to the relevant departments to investigate. And if we are not satisfied with those investigations, then we conduct our own investigations. So what we do, we refer to the department to investigate, we give them a time frame, and then they report back to us. On looking at the report, if we are not happy with the investigation, then we deploy our own investigators to get into the matters and investigate thoroughly. But in relation to public entities, the difficulty is that we don't have jurisdiction over the public entities. However, what we normally do, when we get those complaints from public entities, we refer them to the relevant entities, and then we consult the ministers that are responsible for those entities. So what we then do is to interact with the ministers, because the ministers as executive authorities have got an oversight role over those entities.
You mentioned this in passing at the start of our discussion, Commissioner, the increase in complaints insofar as personnel practices in government departments is concerned. And here we're talking irregular staff appointments and qualifications of those appointed to various positions. How much of an increase are you seeing there?
Look, the numbers are fluctuating. They are picking up, and then at some point we get them going down. You find those, the bulk of those cases, you find them, for example, now that there are no recruitment processes allowed in the public service, then you won't find those complaints for this period where the recruitment has been closed. Immediately recruitment is open, then you will find people making all sorts of allegations, and you find out at times that some of the allegations don't necessarily amount to the true information. Some people would be questioning others' qualifications. They would say this person has been appointed without qualifications, and then when you go through or when you start investigating, you find out that no, but this person's qualifications are equivalent to the minimum requirements in terms of the advert that was there. But then you have those instances where people get appointed irregularly in cases.
You're, of course, briefing the media on the pulse of the Public Service Bulletin on Monday. This is where we're getting these numbers from. And some of the other issues that you talk about, Commissioner, is National Treasury and the fact that it's late in publishing the third quarter reports, essentially on how government departments are doing on paying their service providers on time. Do you have that information now?
We have not yet received the information from National Treasury for the third quarter of last year. So we are still working on the information of the second quarter, but we have, of course, made a request for the information for the third quarter. But as soon as we get the information for the third quarter, we will be able to report on it.
Yeah. This is obviously a big issue, Commissioner, because it means that small businesses, for example, service providers that depend on these payments to happen on time, they're not receiving these payments and they're still sitting in government coffers. The money is.
The non-payment of service providers is our biggest headache. In fact, both non-payment as well as late payment, they are our biggest headache, because our view is that before you owe someone, you enter into a contract. And the contract is clear to say this person is going to render this service, and after rendering a service, they will invoice the department, and the department will pay on the basis of the invoice. But then you find out that there are delays in those payments. Some of the delays are in the route to the accounting officer. Some of the delays don't even, some of the invoices reach the office of the accounting officer late. In some instances, you find out that the accounting officers receive all documents on time, and then they start questioning those invoices when there are existing contracts. So it varies. That is why we have then made a call to accounting officers to execute consequence management at the level of those who delay the processing of the payments. But in the event where the accounting officer is involved themselves, then we then call on executive authorities to institute consequence management on those accounting officers. So until we are able to see consequence management, we will continue to sit with this problem. And then the second thing is that we, as the Commission, have made a call that the payment of service providers should be incorporated into performance agreements of those accounting officers, so that they know that the longer they delay, the more they deprive themselves performance bonuses in terms of those issues. Because we come to realize that they act with impunity, because they know that there will be no consequences for their work, for the way they are frustrating small and medium enterprises.
Yeah, you say it's your biggest headache as the Public Service Commission. I imagine it's the bigger headache for those service providers who are not being paid on time. It's a massive problem at national level, even though there has been a marginal improvement in paying service providers within that 30-day period. But at provincial level, provinces, provincial departments paying after those 30 days, There were 48,000 invoices that were paid after that time frame, totaling 5.9 billion rand. Obviously, that means there's more than one invoice, for example, for one service provider. It's making things difficult for businesses and service providers to survive in an economy that's already incredibly difficult. Commissioner?
Making it difficult for service providers to survive is an understatement. These people who are refusing to pay service providers are killing small businesses, and they are playing into the hands of big businesses, because big businesses can go for months on end without claiming, but they would still be able to render services. But think about that individual who had to go and make a loan in order to be able to provide a service so that they can be able to put food on the table at the end of the day. That poor person, when that person is not paid, the creditor, on the other hand, wants their monies. And when the people ultimately get paid, you find out that in most instances, the money goes to pay interest, pay their debts, and so on and so forth. And they are left with nothing. And they have to go and borrow again because they don't have the running capital.
Commissioner, Public Service Commissioner Anele Gxoyiya, it's a pleasure talking to you this afternoon, sir. Thanks very much indeed for coming on. And it is an incredibly worrying trend, this late payment of service providers. And as the Commissioner says there, it's an understatement even to say so.